All right. Ever wished you could like decode British English, you know, like a pro? Today we're doing a deep dive into British slang. Yeah, some slang terms that'll have you blending in at the pub like you were born with a cuppa in hand.
Yeah, it's really amazing how much slang can reveal about a culture, you know? It's like a secret code to understanding their humor and way of life.
Exactly. We're focusing on four particularly interesting terms, and it's all thanks to an episode of the Language Podcast, Crack the Code, which, by the way, is a great resource if you want to like improve your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Okay, so first up is waffle. Now, if your mind went straight to like breakfast,
Uh-huh.
you might be surprised to hear how the Brits use this word.
Oh yeah, it's a far cry from syrup and butter, right?
Yeah.
Imagine someone talking endlessly but saying absolutely nothing of substance. That's waffling.
Yeah. The podcast gave a great example. He waffled on for hours without getting to the point.
Mm.
I've definitely encountered a few wafflers in my time.
Haha. Yeah, it actually comes from the 17th century verb waffen, meaning to yelp. So it's like a dog barking on and on, kind of a continuous, maybe even meaningless sound.
No, I love that. That suddenly makes so much sense. It's all about that empty, repetitive sound.
Right.
Speaking of repetitive, the podcast suggested thinking of the phrase waffle, waffle, waffle to remember the meaning of pointless talk.
Haha. Yeah, pretty clever, right? And if you want like synonyms to add to your arsenal, ramble and babble, they fit the bill perfectly.
Okay, so waffling is a no-no if you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. I've always wondered, though, why is it seen as such a negative thing in British culture?
That's a great question. British culture often emphasizes politeness and a dislike for like direct confrontation. So waffling can be perceived as a bit, rude because it lacks clarity and conciseness, almost as if the speaker is trying to avoid taking a firm stance.
So it's almost like beating around the bush, which it can be like frustrating if you're looking for a straight answer.
Yeah, precisely. Now, are you ready to move on to our next word? It's all about smoothing things over. Any guesses?
Smoothing things over. Could it be iron out? I'm thinking about ironing gets rid of wrinkles.
You got it. It's a brilliant metaphor, isn't it? Just like ironing clothes removes wrinkles, ironing out difficulties means to resolve or eliminate problems, to make things clear and straightforward.
I love how that like visual really brings the meaning to life. It's like taking those, metaphorical wrinkles, those points of friction, and making everything like smooth and presentable.
Right. The podcast gave the example of they held a meeting to iron out the discrepancies in the report. It perfectly captures the idea of resolving those wrinkles, those points of conflict.
So if you find yourself in a disagreement in Britain, you can say, like, let's iron this out. That would definitely make you sound more like a local.
Absolutely. And for those who like to keep a handy list of synonyms, sort out and resolve work well in this context.
Okay, so we've tackled waffle and ironed out those like tricky situations. What's next?
Now we're stepping into the realm of words that might sound a bit, fancy, but are actually quite common in everyday British conversation. Antithesis.
Antithesis. It does sound a bit intimidating, like something you'd hear in a Shakespearean play.
Ah.
But I'm sure you're going to break it down for us in a way that makes sense.
Of course. At its core, antithesis has two main meanings. The first one is pretty straightforward. It simply refers to the direct opposite of something. Think black and white, up and down, you get the idea.
So basically two sides of the same coin, completely opposed to each other. The podcast had a great example. Her kindness is the antithesis of his rudeness.
Exactly. The second meaning builds on this idea of opposites, but takes it a step further. In rhetoric, antithesis refers to a literary device where two contrasting ideas are placed together to create a striking effect. It's a powerful way to highlight the difference between two concepts.
So it's not just about like opposites in general. It's about using those opposites deliberately to make a point, to create a sort of dramatic contrast.
That's right. The word itself comes from the Greek words anti, meaning against, and tithenai, meaning to place.
So if I put it all together, it literally means placing against, which, makes total sense when you think about it. It's all about placing those opposing ideas like side by side to emphasize their differences.
It's like a linguistic tug of war, right? And for those who love mnemonic devices, a helpful way to remember antithesis is to connect anti, like anti-bullying, where it means against something, with thesis, which is often a statement or idea. So antithesis is like a statement placed against another.
That's a great way to remember it. It's like those contrasting ideas are battling it out on the linguistic stage. And for our synonym enthusiasts, contrary and opposite are good alternatives.
Now, wouldn't it be interesting if we could use antithesis to describe the next word we're going to discuss?
Ooh, a challenge. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, antithesis is all about, stark contrasts, right? But our next word is all about playful teasing and like lighthearted connection. Quite the opposite.
Ah, I see where you're going with this. You're talking about banter, aren't you? It's like the verbal equivalent of a playful nudge, between friends.
Exactly. Banter is that lighthearted, friendly teasing that you often find, among close friends or family, or even colleagues who have a good rapport. It's like adding a dash of spice to a conversation.
The podcast gave a great example. The colleagues enjoyed a bit of banter over coffee. It's that like easygoing atmosphere where everyone feels, comfortable enough to poke fun at each other without anyone getting offended.
Right. And it seems like banter has been around for ages. It dates back to the 17th century and originally referred to verbal jesting. And it's fascinating how some words, manage to stand the test of time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if people were using banter back then the same way we use it today. Like did Shakespeare engage in a bit of banter with his fellow playwrights? Ha. Okay, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But it is interesting to think about how like language evolves.
Definitely. And speaking of evolution, I'm curious about how banter fits into the bigger picture of British culture. We talked earlier about how Brits tend to value politeness and avoid confrontation, right? So wouldn't banter with its like playful teasing contradict that?
That's a great point. It seems counterintuitive, but I think banter actually reinforces those cultural norms in a subtle way.
Yeah.
It's like a way of testing the waters, gauging how comfortable people are with a bit of playful ribbing. It allows them to connect and build rapport without being, overly direct.
I see what you mean. It's almost like a social dance where everyone is trying to like read each other's cues and stay within the boundaries of what's acceptable.
Exactly. It's a way of building intimacy and trust through humor without being, overly aggressive or confrontational. But mastering the art of banter can be, it can be tricky, can't it? I mean, there's a fine line between being, playful and being offensive.
Absolutely. It's all about reading the room, understanding the dynamics of the group, and knowing when to dial it back. If you're unsure, it's always best to, err on the side of caution.
Good advice. And for those who might struggle to remember the word banter, I think it's helpful to connect it with those feelings of, laughter and camaraderie. Think of those moments when you're with friends or family, just enjoying each other's company and having a good laugh. That's the essence of banter.
A perfect association. And of course, we can't forget our trusty synonyms, chit-chat and joking. They capture that same lighthearted, playful energy.
So we've covered 4 amazing British slang terms so far: waffle, iron out, antithesis, and banter. I'm already feeling more confident about, navigating a conversation across the pond. But why should our listener care about these words beyond just sounding cool?
That's a key question. Because it's not just about, impressing people with your vocabulary. It's about connecting with people on a deeper level. Understanding slang allows you to tap into the cultural nuances, the humor, and the way people express themselves. It's like unlocking a secret code to understanding a culture's, heart and soul.
Yeah, it's like gaining a superpower, isn't it? You can suddenly decipher all these like subtle cues and jokes that might have gone over your head before. It opens up a whole new world of understanding and connection.
Exactly. Think about it this way. If you were like traveling to Britain and wanted to, make friends or build relationships, knowing some local slang would definitely break the ice and make you seem more approachable. It shows that you're, interested in their culture and willing to make an effort to understand them.
It's like showing up to a party with the perfect conversation starter. You're instantly more engaging and memorable.
Right. And even if you're not planning a trip anytime soon, understanding slang can enrich your experience of British media. You'll be able to pick up on jokes and nuances in movies, TV shows, books, and music that might have gone unnoticed before.
Yeah. It's like watching a movie with subtitles for the first time. Yeah. Suddenly you're catching all those like clever puns and cultural references that you might have missed otherwise.
Precisely. It adds a whole new layer of enjoyment and appreciation.
So whether you're a language enthusiast, a traveler, or simply someone who, enjoys learning new things, expanding your knowledge of slang is a fantastic way to broaden your horizons and connect with the world around you.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, learning is a journey, not a destination. There's always more to discover, more words to unlock, more cultures to explore.
Speaking of exploration, earlier we touched upon how British